Civilization is a liar. It told you that safety is a right, but look around you right now. The lights are out. The police are dust. When the predator steps out of the shadows, breathing hard and smelling of copper, he doesn't care about your rights or your bank account. He sees meat. You have exactly 1 second to decide. Are you the prey, or are you the sudden catastrophic failure of his survival plan? Your car keys are gone, but you have leverage. Your phone is a brick, but your elbow is a sledgehammer forged by millions of years of evolution. Physics didn't die with the power grid. Violence is just high-speed math, and you are about to become a master calculator. I am going to teach you how to turn your own anatomy into a ballistics equation that ends in their destruction. Stay with me, because the cold is crawling up your legs, and if you don't learn how to burn, you will freeze. The engineering of violence. The modern world made you soft, swaddling you in comfort and outsourcing your protection to men with badges, but inside that soft exterior lies a dormant machine of devastating potential. You are walking atop a marvel of engineering called the skeletal system, a chassis of 206 calcified levers and struts that are harder than oak and possess a tensile strength rivaling steel. When the social contract evaporates, you must stop viewing your body as a vessel for your consciousness and start viewing it as a kinetic platform. You are not fighting. You are engineering a structural collapse in your opponent. This mindset shift is critical because your attacker is likely larger, heavier, and more experienced in cruelty than you are. To bridge that gap, you cannot rely on strength, which is a finite resource, but instead on mechanics, which are absolute laws of the universe. A smaller person utilizing superior leverage will dismantle a giant who relies solely on muscle every single time because gravity and fulcrums do not have opinions. They simply function. Understand that your body is a tensegrity structure, a system of floating compression components held together by a continuous tension network of fascia and muscle. When you move, you are not just twitching a limb, you are manipulating a web of potential energy. Most untrained people throw a punch using only the muscles in their shoulder and arm, which is biologically inefficient and tactically suicidal. An arm punch generates roughly 100 pounds of force, which might annoy an attacker but will not stop them. However, if you recruit the ground, pushing off with your heel, rotating the femur in the hip socket, twisting the torque through the lumbar spine, and channeling that massive wave of kinetic energy out through the knuckles, you transform that 100 pounds into 800 pounds of impact. This is the difference between a slap and a car crash. You must learn to become a conduit for the Earth's energy, drawing power from the floor and transmitting it into the target. But power is useless without a delivery system, which brings us to the architecture of the weapon itself. Structural integrity and the spear improvisation. The human hand is an evolutionary masterpiece designed for dexterity, grasping tools, and intricate manipulation, but it is a terrible hammer. It consists of 27 small, intricate bones held together by delicate ligaments that are prone to shattering under stress. When an untrained survivor swings a wild haymaker at a skull, the skull usually wins. The cranium is a spherical arch, one of nature's strongest shapes, while the metacarpals of the hand are slender rods. If you strike the hard bone of a forehead with the soft bones of your ring and pinky fingers, you will experience what is known as a boxer's fracture. In the wasteland, a broken hand is not just an injury. It is a slow death sentence because you cannot forage, you cannot climb, and you cannot wield a tool. Therefore, we must alter the geometry of the strike to favor our anatomy. You must align the skeletal structure to create a solid column of bone from your knuckles to your shoulder blade. Make a fist and look at it closely. The index and middle knuckles are the only striking surfaces that align directly with the radius and ulna, the two heavy bones of the forearm. When you strike with these two knuckles, the force travels in a straight line up the arm, dispersing safely into the heavy musculature of the shoulder. If your wrist is bent even 10 degrees, the force will shear sideways, tearing the tendons and collapsing the joint. You must lock the wrist, creating a rigid spear where the elbow joint acts as the driving piston. Alternatively, abandon the fist entirely. The palm heel strike is a superior mechanic for the untrained survivor. By bending the hand back and exposing the carpal bones at the base of the palm, you create a bludgeon that cannot be easily broken. Driving the palm heel upward into the nose or chin transfers momentum directly into the cervical spine, creating a whiplash effect that scrambles the vestibular system of the brain without risking the structural integrity of your own manipulators. But having a weapon is one thing, knowing where to bury it is another. The topography of vulnerability. Your enemy may look like a fortress, hulking and impenetrable, but he is riddled with structural flaws and biological exhaust ports that cannot be conditioned away. Muscle protects the torso and bone protects the brain, but there are areas where the nervous system is exposed to the surface, completely unshielded. We call these the soft targets, and in a life or death struggle, targeting them is not fighting dirty, it is fighting intelligently. The concept of honor died when the lights went out. Your primary objective is to overload the attacker's central nervous system with so much sensory input that it shuts down the aggressive drive. This is not about pain, because adrenaline can mask pain. This is about mechanical failure. Consider the ocular cavity. The eyes are gelatinous orbs comprised of water and protein, sitting in a socket with zero muscular covering. No amount of weightlifting can harden an eyeball. A thumb driven into the corner of the eye does not just cause damage, it triggers the oculocardiac reflex, a primitive physiological response that lowers heart rate and induces nausea. Even a light gouge forces the brain to protect vision above all else, causing the attacker to instinctively recoil and cover his face, buying you the most valuable commodity in combat, time. Similarly, the throat is a high-value target. The trachea is a cartilaginous tube that requires an open airway to function. A strike to the Adam's apple using the web of your hand, the area between thumb and index finger, triggers a laryngospasm. The airway constricts, panic sets in immediately, and the body's priority shifts from kill prey to breathe now. An enemy who cannot breathe cannot chase you. Scanning lower on this map of human geography, we find the perennial weakness of the male anatomy, but we must approach it scientifically. The groin is a cluster of nerve endings that connect directly to the vagus nerve. A kinetic impact here causes a vasovagal response, a sudden drop in heart rate and blood pressure that leads to fainting or extreme muscular weakness. However, simply kicking vaguely between the legs is often ineffective due to adrenaline or baggy clothing. The mechanic must be an upward driving shin or knee, utilizing the large muscle groups of your quadriceps to lift the attacker off the ground by their pelvis. This scatters their base of gravity while simultaneously delivering the neurological shock. Yet, the most accessible weakness is often the one closest to the ground, the knee joint. The knee is a simple hinge designed to move back and forth. It has absolutely no structural integrity against lateral force. A kick to the side of the knee requires only 40 pounds of pressure to tear the medial collateral ligament. If you shatter the hinge, the door falls down. A crippled attacker is no longer a predator, he is a stationary object. The geometry of defense and the void. Now we must discuss defensive architecture, because before you can dismantle the enemy, you must survive their initial assault. The average untrained aggressor attacks with what is known as effective violence, wild, emotionally charged swings that create wide arcs of motion. These attacks are terrifying to behold, but are mechanically flawed because they travel a long distance and telegraph their trajectory. Most victims freeze, their binocular vision locking onto the threat, making them a stationary target. You must embrace the concept of the void. Do not be where the force is. A block is a collision of forces, and if he is stronger, you lose. Instead of blocking, you deflect and evade, moving your body off the line of attack while redirecting their kinetic energy. Imagine a bull charging a matador. The matador does not stop the bull with his hands. He steps slightly to the side and guides the beast past him. This is the principle of vectors. If a punch is coming straight down the center line, a subtle shift of your head and a parrying slap to the outside of their arm changes the vector of the strike by mere inches, which is enough to make it miss your nose and sail over your shoulder. By adding a small amount of lateral force to their forward momentum, you unbalance them. Every time an attacker misses, they expend valuable adenosine triphosphate (ATP) energy and lose emotional confidence. You are effectively draining their battery while preserving your own. Keep your hands high, creating a defensive fence that protects your own central computer, the brain. Your elbows should be tucked in to protect the ribs, creating a compact geometric shape that is difficult to penetrate. A tight sphere is harder to break than an open cross. However, the reality of physics dictates that eventually, gravity wins. What happens when the fight goes to the horizontal plane? The ground is a nightmare scenario where abrasion, debris, and multiple attackers become lethal variables. But even here, physics is your ally if you understand the principle of the lever. Terrestrial mechanics and leverage warfare. If you are knocked to the earth, the primal panic will scream at you to turn your back and cover your head. You must override this instinct. Turning your back exposes your spine and neck, the two most critical avenues for life termination. Instead, you must fight from your back using your legs, the strongest limbs you possess. This position, known as the guard, allows you to place the soles of your feet or your shins against the attacker's hips and torso. Recall that your leg muscles are roughly 3 to 4 times stronger than his arm muscles. He cannot push through your legs if you brace them correctly. You are turning your body into a skeletal barricade. If the assailant manages to mount you, sitting on your chest and pinning your hips, you are in the coffin position. Bench pressing him off is impossible. He has gravity and you are fighting against it. You must use a Class 1 lever system to escape. Trap one of his arms tightly to your chest so he cannot use it to post for balance. Simultaneously, trap his foot on the same side with your own foot. You have now removed 2 of his 4 stability pillars. Now explosively bridge your hips upward and roll toward the trapped side. Without his arm and leg to brace himself, his center of gravity will inevitably tip over. This is not strength, it is removing the table leg and watching the table fall. Once the reversal is complete, do not stay to trade blows. The ground acts as a heat sink, sapping your energy and mobility. Your only goal on this ground is to return to the vertical axis immediately. Scramble, kick, create distance, and stand up. The chemistry of fear and the OODA loop. All the biomechanical knowledge in the world is useless if the operator of the machine is paralyzed. Fear is not an emotion in this context, it is a chemical reaction. When the threat appears, your hypothalamus dumps a cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. This is the fight or flight response, but for modern humans, it often manifests as a freeze. Your fine motor skills degrade, your auditory canal closes, and you experience tunnel vision. This is your biology preparing you to sprint, but it hinders your ability to perform complex martial movements. You must hack your own nervous system to regain control. The bridge between this panicked animal brain and the logical prefrontal cortex is the breath. A panicked human breathes shallowly into the chest, which signals the brain that dying is imminent. To reverse this, you must engage the diaphragm. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and exhale for a count of 4. This box breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, sending a definitive chemical message to the brain. We are calm. We are capable. You need to perform this reset in the microseconds before contact. Once the brain is back online, you engage the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Most victims get stuck in the observe phase, paralyzed by the horror of the situation. You must force the cycle through to act. Action implies initiative. Action creates a new reality that the attacker must now respond to. By acting first, throwing sand, screaming, striking the eyes, you force the attacker into a reactionary state, disrupting his OODA loop and making his brain lag behind yours. Aggression as a survival tool. Finally, we must discuss the fuel that runs the machine. In a polite society, aggression is discouraged, medicated, and suppressed. In the ruins of the world, aggression is a tool as vital as fire or a knife. There is a switch in your psyche that you must learn to flip, transforming you from a passive victim into an active threat. This is the shift from defensive fear to predatory indignation. You must stop thinking, "I hope he doesn't hurt me," and start thinking, "How dare he touch me?" This psychological pivot alters your body language, your hormone profile, and your kinetic output. Predators in the wild prefer easy meals. They look for hesitation, weakness, and submission. When they encounter a creature that explodes with violent, calculated intensity, they often reassess the cost-benefit analysis of the attack. You must visualize the destruction of the target not as a possibility, but as a necessity. Your elbow striking his temple is not a hope. It is a physics equation you are solving in real time. The scream you release is not a cry for help. It is a war cry designed to spike your own adrenaline and terrify the opponent. This is the switch. When it is flipped, you are no longer human. You are a force of nature. The Fortress of Bone. The world has ended, but look at your hands. Open and close them. Feel the tendons slide over the knuckles. That is technology. That is weaponry. You are not defenseless just because the gun is empty. You simply forgot that you were the weapon all along. You have the physics of a car crash in your hips, the density of stone in your elbows, and the ruthless calculation of a supercomputer in your skull. The cold wind is blowing and the shadows are getting longer, but you do not need to be afraid of the dark anymore. You are the thing that bumps back. Adaptation is the only currency that matters now. Train these movements until they are etched into your subcortex. Practice the breathing until it is automatic. Visualize the anatomy of your targets until you see skeletons instead of people. Because when the time comes, and it will come, you won't rise to the occasion. You will sink to the level of your training. Do not let your level be 0. You are a biological fortress. Defend the walls. Drop a comment below with the one survival technique you trust the most. The grid is down, but the network is us. Stay sharp, stay dangerous, and above all, refuse to freeze.